Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison, and in the spirit of the trees, in the spirit of living nature, with deep gratitude for all the generations before us that have led us to this present moment, I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising. Today is a very special day. Today, July 22nd, is the feast day of Mary Magdalene in the Catholic Church. And so every year on this day, we take special note of Mary Magdalene. She's a particularly important figure in my own life personally. When I came into the university, I dedicated my tenure as president to Mary Magdalene and the Black Madonna on the advice of several people who were counseling me at the time. And we inaugurated my first year by going to France with a group of about 40 students from Ubiquity. And we retraced the steps of Mary Magdalene, who, as many of you know, was by tradition after the passing of Christ, with whom she was a very intimate consort and guide and partner. She went to Alexandria for a number of years and then came to France. So we have, for many, many years, consecrated this day in a very special way, both personally and institutionally. And in fact, we want to start our program today with a brief discussion of what we're going to be doing in Chartres between the 13th and the 19th of August. We are in our 16th year. We've been making pilgrimage to Chartres. Chartres is our sanctum sanctorum. It's the place where the Druids thousands of years ago recognized a very specific, powerful feminine energy, and that telluric energy of the feminine continues to be present to the contemporary times, the present day, and is the reason why in Chartres you have the Chartrian Cathedral dedicated to Notre Dame. It's a very, very powerful place, and it's considered the most elegant of all the cathedrals, known as the womb of the world by Joseph Campbell, the queen of the cathedrals, recognizing that St. Peter's Cathedral in Rome, where the Pope sits, is the king of cathedrals, but Chartres is the queen. That's the place of the divine feminine. And so I've asked Banafsheh Sayad, who's the co-director of the Chartres Academy, and over a number of years now has been helping us choreograph and plan our pilgrimages to Chartres, to join me just for a few minutes to say a few words about what is in store for our pilgrimage. As of today, we have 85 pilgrims joining us in Chartres. So Banafsheh, welcome, and just say a few words about what we're going to be doing there and anything you want to say about Mary Magdalene and the Black Madonna that comes to your mind.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everyone. A blessed feast day of Miriam of Bethany, Saint Mary Magdalene to you. It's a perfect day to say a few words about the pilgrimage to Chartres that Jim just talked about, Venus Rising, from August 13 to 19. As you may know, as many of you may know, there are two Marys at the heart of Chartres Cathedral. Mother Mary and her daughter-in-law, Mary Magdalene. We see her presence, Mary Magdalene's presence in the cathedral. Her life is depicted in the second window on the right as you enter the main western portal of the cathedral. There's a chapel dedicated to her in the crypt. and many, many depictions of her in the sculptures in different parts of the cathedral. During our pilgrimage, we will explore her representations, her story, her lineage, especially in the cathedral, and her close ties with the Black Madonna, who will be the center of our gathering in Chartres, as our pilgrimage coincides with the Feast of the Assumption of Mother Mary, a truly glorious time to be in Chartres, when the Black Madonna, who is normally kept out of the public sight for most of the year, is processed in the streets of Chartres and finally placed in the choir inside the cathedral for 7 days until the coronation for all to commune with her. We have planned a very unique opportunity to spend quite a bit of time in the cathedral during its closed hours to sing and chant, to do sacred movement, pray, meditate, spend time in contemplation, and to breathe together. This is going to be very special for us. We will, of course, visit the crypt and walk the labyrinth. And the time that we are not in the cathedral will be uh, listening to presentations by our stellar faculty, V, formerly known as Eve Ensler, Andrew Harvey, our own Jim Garrison, will be talking about apology and reconciliation. They will be giving discourses about that, as well as Venus and also the Black Madonna and the significance of the Assumption of Mary. We will be singing and enjoying sound journeys with Ruth Cunningham, doing dream work with Apila Colorado, and listening to discourse by Kaylin Rain, and also a daily star report by Lynn Bell. People that will be gathered, this 85 people that Jim mentioned, and the rest of us, I will also be guiding people into sacred movement and whirling. The people who will be gathering are really a beautiful community of light-hearted people. And together we will explore the theme of apology, reconciliation, and healing, really opening ourselves to the possibility of regenerating love, which is really the only option left for us at this time, as many of you are experiencing the great turbulence. The time that we spend in the cathedral and in discourse and in sharing will be also augmented by many opportunities to explore the beautiful city of Chartres and to spend time together in the beautiful cafes and the quaint cafes and in the amazing parks and nature of Chartres. I think that's it for me, Jim. I also want to say that there's still some few spots left if people are interested to join us. I'm going to put the link in the chat for you.
I just put the link in the chat, but it's worth putting in
did?
again
Okay.
for everyone. Thank you, Banafshe. It's a particularly important time for us because the last time we were in Chartres was in 2019. And then the pandemic hit in 2020, as you all know, and then again in 2021, it wasn't possible to go. But 3 years later, here we are in 2022, the scourge of the pandemic, while still with us, is not as severe as it was in 2020 and 2021. So there are no restrictions to come to Chartres. If that's a concern with you. The forest fires and the heat waves seem to be subsiding a bit as we go into this week. We only have a couple weeks left till we gather in Chartres, but we thought on the feast day of Mary Magdalene, we would just bring the opportunity of the pilgrimage to that sacred place. In which Mary Magdalene has always had a very special place as one of the Marys that the cathedral is consecrated to. So Banavshe, thank you so much, and we'll see you in Chartres.
Thank you so much. Again, a blessed feast day to everyone, lovers of Mary Magdalene, the towering figure for us all.
Thank you. And now, everyone, will turn our attention to Mary Magdalene with one of the foremost scholars in Mary Magdalene studies, Anine van der Meer, who is Dutch, has written, I think, 16 books on various aspects of religion and spirituality, with a particular emphasis on the sacred feminine. She's written on the Black Madonna. She's written on the history of the goddesses and the feminine images in Paleolithic and Neolithic art. You all know that in France is the Lascaux cave and other caves down there in Bordeaux, which has been the region where there's been so many of the fires. And that's the region of the very ancient Paleolithic and primitive art in the caves. And so one of her recent books has been on Mary Magdalene Unveiled. So Anine, I welcome you back to Humanity Rising. Anine was with us about a year ago, and her discourse was so fascinating to so many people that we've invited her back on the feast day of Mary Magdalene. So Anine, thank you for joining us, and I turn the program over to you.
Thank you, Jim. Well, I'm going to share. Okay.
There we go.
Okay. Thank you very much for your kind invitation. Yes, it's such a special day. 2,000 years of denigration, of, yes, the sidelining of bad press for Mary Magdalene. And now times are changing. Why is she so important? She is unveiling herself. She's returning in her force, in her power. And with her returning and with her unveiling herself, there's also the unveiling of a lost wisdom tradition. And that has everything to do with the Black Madonna, even with the black holes in the cosmos. Wisdom is a dark energy. And in this dark energy is a lot of light. And this is all coming back. So we are regaining a lost wisdom tradition. And Mary Magdalene is a great help in this unveiling of this lost wisdom tradition, which was dramatic, which was sad for humanity. But we're living in a new era. And in 2010, this gospel of the beloved companion was given back to humanity. It was kept for, let's say, 2,000, a little bit less years, written by herself, hidden in the southern of France, kept by a Lacono Qatar community, a closed community, and they decided to give their precious hidden gospel back to humanity in 2010, and they published this book in English and in French, her own gospel. And she's called in this gospel the beloved companion or consort, the legal wife of Yeshua the Nazarene. But this has everything to do, this moment in 2010 has everything to do with this revolution in consciousness that is going on and on. So we know that every last part of a century, there is an influx of consciousness. So it was so in 1875, starting with Mrs. Blavatsky, grounding the Theosophical Society. And then we had this wave of channeling and inspirational, this contact with higher levels. And then we had a new physics. Quantum physics was developed. And then in 1975, we had what we called New Age. So it was a mingling of Eastern and Western knowledge. And then in 2012, something very important happened, because as the Hindus taught, Kali Yuga ended, and the Hopi and Maya calendar also said 2012 is a very important milestone, because a new time will start. And then in Holland, we have several people, because I'm talking from the Netherlands, I'm a Dutch scholar, and we have several people who can measure the heightening of light frequency on the earth in general, on people, individual. And they measured a heightening of light frequency in 2015, 2021. So there's a lot of light and consciousness coming in Mother Earth and into humanity. But this has resulted in a time of crisis and transition. And we all know there's a lot of negativity. You read the papers, you watch telly, it's horrible. But we have to look for these seeds of light down under this veil of negativity. I want to continue with a little bit of information about the Gospel of the Beloved Companion. So Miriam's own gospel written by her. She left her country, so Judea. She left it, and she, with her family, and went to Alexandria, probably, and afterwards she went to France. I could give a long talk about all her experiences in France, her teachings in France. The Black Madonnas you can find on spots where she taught. So the divine feminine wasn't lost, but there are symbols. And also in art history, in French and Italian art history, that she was there, but it had to be hidden. You had to see the symbols, the clues. So I'm not going to talk about France today, probably another time, but I want to stress today the ascension she is teaching us right now, because that is the most important thing in her gospel. It's about the heavenly journey, or the ascension. So the lightening up of the large particles in our own bodies, so that we can ascend into higher dimensions. And as Jim already said, I've written a Dutch book, Mary Magdalene Unveiled, and there will come an English book. It's already translated, it's in progress, and it will come, I hope, next year. So what is so important about Miriam's gospel? Well, there are several points. Of course, that she's there as his companion, as the Migdala. I will come back to that. But one of the beautiful things is that God the Mother is mentioned 167 times, well, very, very often. And she's not talking about God the Father. She's talking about God the Mother, the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit is a she in this manuscript. And then Miriam opens with, this is the testimony of the Son of Humanity, once called Yeshua. All I say here is true. His words, his deeds, his life, and his death. And at the end of the verse 1, I know that his testimony is true. It's about truth. And then how do we know that it is her document? Because she, at the end of her gospel, in verse 1 of chapter 44, she writes, it's quite a long verse, but there, the last words with which she finishes is, I am Miriam. So her Hebrew name, called the Magdala, the toweress, the high initiated, the beloved companion. Companion is consort, is wife. So she is talking here as the Magdala and as his consort. And last time I spoke for Humanity Rising, I went through all these points, but I have to repeat a little bit about the background. I gave a lot of information then, so I am only repeating a little bit. So you all know that we have the 4 Gospels in the New Testament. And the 4th Gospel is called the Gospel of the Beloved Disciple. And it was much later, only at the end of the 2nd century, it was called the Gospel of John. So nobody knew who was this beloved disciple. And there are 21 chapters in the Gospel of John, so-called John, and the first 20 are written by the beloved disciple, which is a male disciple in this Gospel. But in chapter 21, the editors say, this is all written by the male beloved disciple. And we know that this is true, that he told us the truth. So even in the Gospel of John, there are already 2 redactions. The first one by the beloved disciple, and the second one afterwards, after his death, by another party, the canonical party, we call that. So there are a lot of similarities between the 2, but there are also differences. The Gospel of John mentions Mary Magdalene very little and is talking about God the Father. And the beloved companion is doing that a lot different. So people ask themselves, scholars, who is this beloved disciple of the Gospel of the so-called John? Is he the apostle? Cannot be, because he was murdered with his brother James, sons of Zebedee. Is it Lazarus? Is it James' righteousness, the brother of Jesus? Is it John the Elder? Well, a lot of scholars say, well, it was the disciple John the Elder who took the 4th Gospel to Ephesus and reworked it. But there are also people, even before the finding of the Gospel of Miriam, who said, why isn't it, could it be that Mary Magdalene was the author of the basic source document? Well, and then there was a famous scholar in the United States, a Catholic scholar, Raymond Brown, and he was supported by other ones, even by a Dutch scholar called Esther de Boer, who said, Mary Magdalene could probably be the author. And then we see 3 steps. The source text of the 4th Gospel is the Gospel of the Beloved Companion. The second redaction was done by John the Elder, who took it after the destruction of Jerusalem in 66 to Ephesus, and who changed the female companion into the male disciple. And then there was a schism. There were secessionists, the majority of the community in Ephesus, and there were the apostolics. And the secessionists left and took with them the older tradition of Mary Magdalene as consort companion of Jesus, as the successor of Jesus, as the Magdala, the high initiated toweress, who knew the higher knowledge. which was lost. And then in the third redaction, the Orthodox editors create a canonical and official version. And that is the version we now have in our New Testament. Third redaction. And Mary Magdalene and Jesus, they had a different God. They knew a different Godhead. There were the father and the mother, or the mother, father, and 70 children. And these children that were the constellations, that were stars, that were cosmic energies, angelic beings, archangels, they were called their children. So we have a stellar consciousness, a contact with several constellations, and we go from this multidimensional Godhead, after we lose this, to the Godhead of the monotheistic Father alone. And that has everything to do with the first temple. That was connected with the old ancient Hebrew, Egyptian tradition, which was also to be found in the Essene tradition. And that was brought into Palestine, and that we call the first temple tradition. And there you had this multidimensional Godhead of the Father and the Mother and their children. But this all had to leave. We lost this wisdom tradition. And wisdom had a connection with the cosmos, but also with nature on earth and with the human body. So when wisdom was lost, we as humanity lost the connection with nature and lost the connection with our divine body, because it was seen as it's something bad. Sexuality was seen as bad. The feminine, women in general, was seen as bad and seducing. And that image was also laid over Mary Magdalene. So in the second temple tradition, wisdom had to leave. No mother, no children, no heavenly journeys, no angels, no fallen angels anymore, which is very important, because we have still even today, we have to deal with fallen angels. And then the first temple goes into the diaspora, and the leaders of the second temple, of God the Father alone, the second God, the Gnostics call him, were seen as incarnations of the fallen angels by the exiles. There's a lot of history, a lot of things to tell, but I try to be compact. So the Hebrew tradition went into the diaspora, again into Egypt, into Alexandria, and we find enormous community of Hebrews in Alexandria, but also in the rest of Egypt. And of course, there's a connection with the Nag Hammadi codices found in 1945 in Nag Hammadi. It's a library. You see there my tutor, Professor Crispel. I always love to see this picture because he's sitting next to the founder of these codices. There's a lot to tell, but I won't do that. I won't go into detail. The Arab people, they threw some codices in the fire. So a codex is a book, and others, they were sold. And what do we find in the Nag Hammadi Codex? We found this ancient but scattered tradition of Mary Magdalene as a companion, as a consort, as a successor of Jesus, as the possessor of higher knowledge. So we had in the Nag Hammadi library, we have these scattered pieces in the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, the Gospel of according to Mary Magdalene, which is often found in the appendix of modern editions, in the Pistis Sophia. But now we found the Gospel of Miriam. And we see that in the Gospel of Miriam, this older tradition is guarded, is kept. And that older tradition we also find back in the Nag Hammadi. So no fragments anymore, no scattered tradition, a new Mary tradition. Something, eh? Hooray on her feast. So now I'm going to walk you through the Gospel, and I will do it very shortly because we want to go to number 10 and 11, the heavenly journey, because this is the essential significance for the people of today and tomorrow. So we had the opening, and in the baptism, point 2, she is with Yeshua when the Holy Spirit, God the Mother, says that this is her beloved Son, and he is reborn in a new consciousness, heavenly consciousness. The heavens are opening for him. She is with him. So they are together, they are co-teachers. No male disciple was called yet. It happens afterwards. And then we have the marriage of Cana. In this Miriam Gospel, in this Miriam text, it's their marriage. The marriage of Yeshua and Miriam of Bethany. Because in the first chapters, she is called Miriam of Bethany. They both appear to John the Baptist, and he baptizes Jesus, but they're together. And you only can be together in official ways when you have a legal relationship, when you're man and wife. Then there's the first anointing. She anoints his head in first marriage. And then we skip a lot of years, so 30, 31, 32. We go immediately to early 33 when Lazarus rises. So it's not about an ascension. He's laying for as dead, Miriam says. He was not dead. He was laying as dead in his tomb, not in his grave. And he is resurrected by Jesus. And it's not about an ascension, about a resurrection. And, a lot of beautiful new insights. But I go on because after the raising of Lazarus, Jesus and Lazarus, the brother of Mary of Bethany, the wife of Jesus, they were called outlaws. So they were in life danger. They had to flee, and they went to Ephraim. And there Jesus is giving, or Yeshua is giving his teaching for the inner circle. He's giving higher knowledge. It's a beautiful, beautiful chapter about the treasure in the ground, which is our body. You have to find the treasure, the light, drop of light in the heart. And it's about the kingdom. Where can we find the kingdom? Well, it's inside and outside yourself. And when does the kingdom of heaven arrives? Well, it's outside and inside. It's there now. Well, and all these teachings are given there. And there's a mentioning of Salome, the first, one of the female disciples, together with Joanna and a lot of family members of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. So there's a group of female disciples there. Hooray on her feast day. The female disciples may be there at the end, finally. Then Jesus leaves his hiding place in Ephraim and goes back to the dangerous Bethany close to Jerusalem. And, he's in life danger, he knows, but he goes back. And there in March 33, there is this second anointing of his head by his bride, Mary Magdalene. We call this the moment of the second marriage. So you must understand that the Hebrew marriage was composed out of a lot of ceremonies, the engagement, the first, the second marriage. And when somebody is pregnant, they celebrate the second anointing in royal circles. So she is called the Magdala at that moment. Before that moment, she was Miriam of Bethany, the consort, the companion of Jesus. But at that moment, Jesus calls her the Magdala. And the toweress, which is a function, because God the Mother had in the first temple a tower and a room in the tower, and you could ascend by taking the steps into that tower room, and there you could make a heavenly journey, and you could ascend into the heavens, the multidimensional heavens. So this is the first temple symbol. It has to do with Egyptian mystery knowledge and universal mystery knowledge, in my opinion. Well, after she is appointed to be the Magdala, the last meal is coming, and there she is laying at his breast as his companion. So no male disciple laying at Jesus' breast, who could have been John the disciple, was not true because he was murdered, this John the apostle. She was laying there as his companion, as his co-teacher, as the Magdala. She had this honorary place. And then the disciple, Jesus, is telling them that he has to leave because crucifixion is very near, because at that very evening he will be arrested. And then they ask Jesus, who will be our leader after you have gone? And then Jesus says, when the father is leaving, there's the mother who's staying with the children. They don't leave you orphans. So he really is appointing Mary Magdalene as his successor, as the new leader. There's something, eh? Hooray on her name day. Then we have the crucifixion, and then we have taking care with herbs, and he's washed, his body is washed, and herbs are put in the white cloth to heal the wounds. They're not talking about a grave, but about a tomb. And he's led in a new tomb after the taking care of Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother. And when Mary comes back the first day of the week, I'm number 9 now, she finds the tomb empty. Only the cloths are there and the body is gone. And then she's very worried. And then she asks a supposed gardener, and he calls her name. And then she sees how he is resurrected. It's not about an ascension, about a resurrection. So he was able to transform the light particles of his physical body into a higher frequency, and he could bilocate with that new light body. So he was resurrected in another sense than the canonical or orthodox sense. And then she says to her, don't touch me, because I'm not of the flesh anymore and I'm not of the spirit. Don't touch me, and go to the others and tell me I'm resurrected. And then she goes to the family, and they are all very happy. But a lot of disciples, among which was Peter, Andrew, they were all gone to Galilee. They were not present at the crucifixion. They left already in despair. And they were called back, and at the end of the week, all were there, all were present. And then Mary Magdalene presents herself as the Magdala. And then she tells about the heavenly journey. And then you see how she is asked in her gospel, in her own written gospel by Peter, please tell us, Magdala, he's calling her with her official name. Tell us what Jesus loved you more than any other woman, and tell us what he told you and what you understand and what we don't understand and what he didn't tell us. That is in this gospel. Peter didn't know. Peter didn't understand. And then she accepts his invitation as Magdala, and then she tells about her heavenly journey. Number 42 in the text of Miriam. The Magdala answered Peter and said, what is hidden from you, I will proclaim. And she began to speak to them the words that Yeshua had given them. And for me, this Ascension, this chapter on the Ascension, is the essential element of this gospel given back to us in 2010. And it's linked with this consciousness revolution which we're seeing around us and inside us. And then in verse 2, only from the truth I tell you, and Yeshua is explaining, there's a great tree within you. It does not change summer or winter, and its leaves do not fall. Who listens to my words and assents to its crown will not taste death, but know the truth of eternal life. So there's a tree inside you, which you can ascend. And you look at the little picture, you see the roots inside the earth, and we see two trees, the human body and the spine and the 7 chakras, and we see the tree of the Kabbalah with left and right side, and in the middle, the unity trunk. It's very important. Left and right become one in the middle and transcend duality. And then in verse 2, then he showed me a vision in which I saw, and Miriam is talking again, a great tree. And the trunk of this tree are in the earth. I don't see it now, could I? So the earth, which is your body, and then the trunk extends to the crown, which is the kingdom of spirit. So we have a tree inside ourselves, and we have this big macrocosmic tree outside ourselves. And there are 8 bows, and between each bow, there's a guardian. In total, there are 7 guardians. And in the 8th level, there is wisdom. There is our lost lady wisdom. And these guardians, these 7 guardians, challenge the unworthy who try to pass. And then as he said these things, I felt my soul ascend. And then she goes to the first great bow that bears the fruit of love and compassion. This is the most important line, the foundation of all things. So our universe, our galaxy, our all the other universes are based on love and compassion. And I knew that before you can gain this fruit and gain its nourishment, you must be free of all judgment and wrath. Well, this is something you have to skip judge. you're not allowed to judge. And you have to leave behind your wrath, your anger. And when you've freed yourself of these burdens, you may eat of the fruit and so gain the love and compassion that will allow you to pass the first of the 7 guardians. And then Miriam said, and I heard the voice of the Lord of wrath calling me, but I denied him, and he had no part in me. So because there was no judgment and wrath in her energy system anymore, they couldn't come into her energy system, and she could go on. I could give a lot of verses, but I won't do that. I just simply want to show you, and as I did last time, but I want to go into this time, this talk about the modern implications. So the first bow, she has to leave judgment and wrath. And there's the fruit of love and compassion, the foundation of the universe. And then she ascended, and in the second bow, there's ignorance and intolerance. Ignorance has to do with to know what is going on earth, to have the right knowledge. And this is about these evil forces. This is about the master and the prince of the world, and the demons and the fallen angels. This is what they mean with the world. Leave the world behind. So you have to leave intolerance. And then there's the fruit of wisdom and understanding. So tolerance gives wisdom and understanding and right knowledge. Then ascending again, there's duplicity and arrogance. And those two have to be left aside. So walk your talk. Don't be arrogant. And then enjoy the fruit of honor and humility. And then further on to the fourth bow with the fourth guardian, the weakness of the flesh, so the seductions of the world. And then this very important one, the illusion of your fears. Don't be fearful. Don't be afraid, because there are worlds above us and inside us to connect with. And there is strength and courage and truth. Then she meets, and then I have to make it a little bit complicated, because the gospel according to Mary, which was found in Egypt in end of the 19th century in Aknim, in that gospel, there are only 4 levels. But the uniqueness of this gospel of Miriam is that she continues, and she gives 7 levels. Meeting the master of the world, the big deceiver. This is something. Who is this? It's a superstructure of evil. And when you pass that, when you show strength and courage, then you enter the world of non-duality, because there's no duality in level 5, 6, 7. This is something. Eh? So we call that the middle world. So under the veil is the 3 and the 4D dimensional worlds, and above it starts the 5th dimension of non-duality, the middle world. And then she goes up, and she takes the fruit, enjoys the fruit of clarity and truth of your soul. It's a soul story, knowing yourself for the first time and understand that you're the child of the living spirit. And then I could hear no more the voice of the world, and all had become as silence. So there is silence. The world is below the veil, and above the veil there is rest and peace and silence. Then going further to the 6th level, power and healing, the fruit of power and healing, to heal your own soul. The 7th, light and goodness, free from all darkness. So there's no darkness anymore. Fierce joy, fire and flame. So it's very fiery there in the 7th level. And then in the 8th level, the grace and beauty of the spirit. And there she meets this lady, this long lost lady, wisdom. So this is the ancient wisdom tradition which humanity had lost, but which are regaining again. And I felt my soul, and all that I could see dissolve and vanish in a brilliant light, in a likeness unto the sun, so brilliant light. And in the light, I beheld a woman of extraordinary beauty, clothed in garments of brilliant white, so very, very shining lady. And she extended her arms, and I felt my soul drawn into its embrace. And at that moment, I was freed from the world, and I realized that the fetters of forgetfulness was temporary. So linear time and space fall. There's not that anymore. And she remembers. From now on, I shall rest through the time of the age in silence. And then, as from a great distance, I heard the voice of my master tell me, Miriam, whom I have called the Magdala, now you have seen the all, and you have known the truth of yourself, the truth that is I am. So Miriam has seen the all. It's also coming back in several Nakamadi texts. She is the woman who knows the all. And you have become the completion of completions, also a Nakamadi phrase. And thus the vision, first temple, visionary, heavenly journey ended. And she meets this lady on the 8th row. And then I have to give you a little bit of background of this heavenly journey. Because the basis is the shamanism of indigenous cultures, who could reach the etheric and astral levels, and who could find knowledge and bring it back to earth. Then we had these mystery schools in the post-Atlantic world, because when Atlantis sank into the ocean, some people were able to come into the continent, into Egypt, into China, Tibet, India. So in my opinion, this ascension is the ascension of every mystery school in the post-Atlantic world. And Miriam is part of this mystery tradition and giving it back to us. Then you could say, well, the road to ascension in the West and the East were different. The road is different. I don't agree. I would say the West, there is this macrocosmic tree. The image of the tree, the macrocosmic tree, is an Essene image, is an image you find in the Kabbalah. It's an image you find in the First Temple tradition. Wisdom was an image. It was a tree. It was one of her symbols. So there's this macrocosmic tree, then you you ascend through 7 planets into the zodiac. And in the East, you have this microcosmic, so the inner tree. You have to ascend with the force of the Kundalini, the 7 chakras, and then this enlarged consciousness in the 3rd eye, and then this connection with higher levels. But in the Cretan labyrinth, these are integrated. So we have the 7 planetary spheres, and are connected with 7 sounds, the 7 colors, the 7 days of the week, the 7 metals. But we also have the chakras, so the microcosmic tree. So there's a correspondence. We integrate outer and inner. And when you resonate out and outside and inside become one. And this heavenly journey ascent, it is universal, but it was in Egypt known as the Merkaba tradition. We found it in a Hermetic text. I'm a little bit scholarly now, but I want to show you that is a very important part of the Egyptian mystery tradition, which was handed over in the Hermetic text and in the Dead Sea Scrolls and in the Nag Hammadi library. And then we have these prophets of the first temple, and they all made a heavenly journey, a lot of them, but it was forbidden in the second temple. It disappeared, but still we find it in the many Gnostic, Christian, Judaic, and Kabbalistic, and even Islamic texts. In the Hekalot text of the Judaism, and in the Kabbalah, in Jewish mysticism. And of course, we find the heavenly journey in many of the writings of the Nag Hammadi library. And the mother is called there Barbelo, but it's one of the names of wisdom of Sophia. So Mary Magdalene belongs to an age-old mystery tradition in Egypt, in the ancient Hebrew tradition, before it was expelled, in Greece, Pythagoras, in India. And we scholars, we always said, well, the heavenly journey, it's something mystical, it's something religious, spiritual. And then we were not taken very serious by the people who say, well, something spiritual we don't understand. But now there's a new approach to ascension, a modern scientific approach. We have the physics of ascension, and we call it quantum physics. And what's about ascension, there is this new, not religion, but scientific explanation that the subatomic particles accelerate and manifest as whirlpools. And they explain to us, these quantum physics, that there is no solid or dead matter, that there's a field of subatomic particles which move around and were. So a new definition of ascension would be, ascension is the ability to accelerate subatomic particles into a higher frequency. And the question is, how can we do it? Well, you have to understand the world in which we live. There's this restricted reality, 3D and 4D. There's this middle world, the bigger reality, from 5D on till 8 or 13D. In some Nag Hammadi text, there's 13 levels. And then the most upper level is the level of the spirit, it's the unmanifested. So it's AD or 13D and above. Then, if you're living only in this 3D dimension of duality, of struggle to survive, and of separation, and you're living in a kind of cage, think of Plato. He has written about this. Then the modern literature about ascension, because I'm combining old and new now, the modern literature is talking about 4D. It's about interlife. In this fourth dimension, the deceased and the new souls waiting for a new incarnation are waiting. But they cannot come in 5D yet, the dimension of non-duality, because they still have to solve their karma, their karmic burden. We are sevenfolded, threefolded, and also sevenfolded. And then I will talk about the Wheel of Samsara, and this is universal knowledge, universal wisdom. And you find it in Buddhism, Hinduism, modern esotericism, that when you stay in 3 and 4D, you circle from life, interlife, back into incarnation, interlife, back into incarnation. And you cannot escape the wheel of samsara. And then what a lot of wise people are telling us, when we are being born, we descend in 7 steps. And when we die, we ascend in 7 steps. And we have this beautiful, beautiful knowledge of Geoffrey Hudson, and theosophist, and already and died in 1983, written a lot of books. And he saw in the womb how the causal body was born, and afterwards the mental, the astral, and the etheric. And finally, when the physical body was let's say, surrounded by all these higher, more subtle bodies, was born, there were a lot of angels, and the mother herself guides every birth. So that's really comforting to know that there are so many spiritual forces around being born and dying. When you die, you go the way up again. And this is how the universe works. Mary Magdalene is the woman who understands the all. It's a universe of love and compassion. When you send out into the universe this beam of love and compassion, these seeds, then it will attract, and the universe will multiply. Then there will come synchronicity in your life, little miracles you cannot explain, but they are there. You vibrate in 3D with the higher dimensions. So the distance is falling away because there's this resonating, vibrating field. And then you have your will is, what you're saying, it's not, you will get a spiritual will and spiritual devotion and intention. And so there was a kind of modern explication about the woman who knew the all. And then the big disappointment 2,000 years ago. Because Peter and Andrew didn't want to listen. They didn't understand, and the ways are parting. And then this sad story that Mary Magdalene had to leave her country, take her family with her, went into France, and there this wisdom tradition, marked by the statues of the Black Madonna and the big cathedrals devoted to Notre Dame, because in my opinion, Mary Magdalene was the apostle of France till, let's say, the 12th century. In France, they knew Mary Magdalene was there, was teaching them, was the companion and consort of Jesus. They knew it. But it had to be hidden. Well, it's a dramatic story. 2,000 years of ignorance, hidden symbols, and now is a time, because there's revolution in consciousness, we are heightening our frequency, especially after 2021. And there are so many signs that things are changing. because I had to give a lecture for the Theosophical Society, and they had a flyer. And in that flyer, you read, research shows that 51% of the population in Western countries has had extraordinary experiences: clairvoyancy, telepathy, lucid dreaming, near-death experience, contact with loved ones who passed away, and mystical and spiritual experience. I could add geomancy, what Jim mentioned it. So in the earth, there are special portals where the vibration of the earth is very strong, where you can reach inner and higher dimensions more easy, especially now the frequency of the earth is heightening. So Chartres, the cathedral, is one of those places. Several caves are one of those are places, but they're all over the world. A lot of angels book, noetic studies about consciousness, regressions. Many people remember ancient lives, especially the people in England and America who remember as seen lives. Very interesting. A new source for science, for the new science. I'm a scientist, and I'm devoted to the new science. Modern channeling, all kinds of channelings, cosmic vision on the solar system, intergalactic contact, because we are not alone in the universe and in the galaxy, beings of light and unlight, ascension and activating the light body. Well, a lot of new things are happening. So interesting and so comforting. So don't lose hope. It will come. And now, the last little point, significance of the gospel of the beloved companion, of Miriam's gospel. Well, we saw this revolution in consciousness. We saw it is 22 time of crisis and transition. And then we have this gospel of Mary Magdalene, the Magdala. She brings this lost wisdom tradition to the West. It's about ascension. Ascension is the ascension. And how to ascend is to become light and love. It's the way of the opened heart. And how can you activate those subatomic particles that they are, circling and as a whirlpool, as a little tornado, and then lifting and lifting all these heavy particles into more subtle levels with which you can resonate with the world, macrocosmic world outside and inside. How can you do it? Be grateful. Gratefulness. Give service, as I do now for you. Resonate with the dimensions inside and outside. Forgive and ask forgiveness. Surrender each evening. Surrender yourself after asking for forgiveness, and trust that it will be okay at the end. And we see this beautiful picture, modern picture of this Mary Magdalene unveiling herself and carrying the all on her head. The feast of Mary Magdalene, the 22nd of July in the year 2022, with a magic date. And this was the message for our modern era. I show you my websites where you can find more information. And there's a trailer of the English book, Mary Magdalene Unveiled, on my website, www.aninevandermeer.nl, the Netherlands. Go back to my end slide. And Jim, I hope you're there.
Yes, indeed. And maybe turn off your
Yeah.
screen share so
Yes.
we can have a dialogue for a few minutes.
Yes.
That was marvelous, Anine. Thank you so much. A lot of rich material and very affirming messages in the chat box for those of us who have been tracking you in the Zoom call rather than passively through Facebook and LinkedIn, etc. So thank you. A couple of questions that have come up. I think people are intrigued by the role that Mary Magdalene played in both the life of Jesus and in the early church. And I'm wondering, in addition to the Gospel of the Beloved Companion, what are the other sources for this point of view? Because it is so contrary to sort of the official church doctrine, which is sought to just thoroughly repress the true nature of Mary Magdalene, her history, and her contribution to early Christianity. If one thinks, for example, of the Gospel of John, as it's now called, it's considered the most mystical of all the Gospels, the most etheric and spiritualized, and to have that actually originally written by a woman is nothing less than revolutionary in terms of Christian perception of itself, let alone the role that Mary Magdalene played in the life of Jesus, his wife and mother and so forth. So just say a little bit more from your extensive background of how you personally came to that conclusion as a scholar.
Well, I knew because I study from my 21st year, and I'm nearly 69 now, so it's quite a long time.
Long time.
So I was intrigued by the Nag Hammadi texts.
Yeah.
Because my tutor, he started to learn me about the Black Madonna. That was his first. And then he said, well, the God of Israel had a wife. I said, what? What do you say there? Yahweh was married. And then I fell from my chair. And and then he said, well, if you want to know more, because I was very curious to know about the divine feminine, because I only knew Mary, the mother, as a good Catholic, raised by the nuns. And then he said, well, you have to study the Nag Hammadi library, because there you can find this ancient tradition, this lost tradition. He didn't say, he pointed me at the Nag Hammadi, but at that moment, I didn't know it was a lost tradition. Because in the Nag Hammadi, you start with a scattered tradition, a broken tradition. You only have the broken pieces in your hand. And then you have to make the puzzle. And you cannot make it at once. You have to search for the pieces here and there. And then, because I really want to persevere, I want to persevere. And then they came on my path. I met Margaret Barker, this fantastic scholar in the Old Testament studies and New Testament, who knows archaic Hebrew. And then she said, well, they changed the Old Testament because there's an older testament. And there, if you change the text back into the oldest archaic layer in the Hebrew, you will find wisdom, the lost lady. And Mary Magdalene is a priestess of this lost wisdom tradition, very connected to Isis. Because in the Nag Hammadi library, it's not about Isis, but it's about Sophia, about wisdom. And in the pre-Christian text, you have these hymns. They were sung, they were ecstatic to wisdom as the manifestation of the the consciousness which was not visible and touchable. So she manifested in an energetic way this male consciousness. She was the female form.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why it goes through all these levels. Emanation of emanation. That's what the Nakamari library teaches you. You have the source, and then the father and the mother from there, and then the daughter and the son, and then all these emanations of light beings, male and female together. And then at the end, the earth, third dimension, very physical, very heavy, very dense. And then there's this enormous veil. And the Nakamari tells you everything. But these texts are difficult, and you really have to persevere. But it was Margaret Barker who learned me to reconstruct the Old Testament into an older testament.
Mm.
And then there was this link with Egypt, with ancient Isis. And in I'm writing a new book, and you won't believe it, but as a scholar of the new era, I'm into regressions accounts, because people remember that they were Essenes in those days.
Mm-hmm.
And many people remember, and they remember the same things, that Mary Magdalene was his companion, was his wife. You see, and when you put all these things together, when you're so courageous to also be grateful for the new information that is coming, not only the old text, but you have to combine what is old and you have to translate it, to bridge it into the new. And I'm open also for these regressions accounts, you see, because they are giving so beautiful, so fantastic information, also about Mary Magdalene in France and even in England, about Joseph of Arimathea, and it's wonderful. So there's a lot, it's a much bigger picture is opening itself up for me now, and I'm so grateful.
Say more about regression, the pathway of regression that you're writing about. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
There's obviously people know generally about regression therapy, where you, in your mind, you literally regress back into more primordial stages of development, even inside the womb and back beyond the womb to past lifetimes. But tell us how you're using this. Are you doing it yourself? Are you gathering?
No.
Well, how's this?
I'm a scholar, but I'm open for new information, and everything starts when you understand that the frequency of the earth is heightened up. Then you understand that the distance between those more subtle dimensions is getting littler. You see, formerly there was this dark earth, and these dimensions were very far away, but now it's closer. So we can download more information at this very moment. Some people can. So there was a time I didn't want to hear about channelings. I bought the books, but I thought, well, I cannot work with it. I'm a scholar.
Yeah. I can't scholar my way through this.
Yeah, that's it. And then I started to read and understand, and it's Mary Magdalene herself who took me by the hand in my persistency, in my dogmatic attitudes of the traditional scholar. And she helped me to bridge old and new. And then I started to read and to understand better. And then I opened up. It's a process in myself. That's it. I opened up for new information. And then I understood that it was necessary that because so many information is lost, so many information was misformed, these canonical texts are, there are things added into it. Things are put negative because there were many female disciples. And they followed Mary Magdalene in her leadership. Why not?
Sure.
In the first and second century. And there were Mary the mother was loved too. There was a whole circle. And so I understand that the channeling, the channel, let's say formally, it was very difficult to channel messages from energies in the higher levels. It was difficult. You had to be in a dark room, and you was absolutely no disturbance possible, because it was very dangerous for the channel. And then there only was one single candle, so it had to be very dark. And then the voice of the channel changed, and the whole attitude and the energy changed, and everything that is past. Of course, there are a few channels who work like that in the deep trance, but the levels of trance are changed because the distance between the dimensions is getting less far. Gotcha. So nowadays, channels, they can stay in their. So formerly, you had to put your own personality aside, and then the entity could give the message through. But nowadays, the channels, they can do both. They can stay for a part in their own personality and can receive the information. And why is that so important? Because this information, so it's about channeling, but it's also about regression. Because this information, when it confirms other information, then it gives you a whole new picture. Probably because in the regressions, people were eyewitnessing things. So we are talking about eyewitness accounts. And I don't say I believe everything, or I take for granted everything. Some things, I really feel happy when I read them. I think, well, this is true. Okay, I use my own intuition as a scholar, because I'm a scholar of the new era. I may use my intuition. After 50 years of working in ancient text, I may use my intuition, and I can feel. I can feel when something is true or not. In my opinion, sure. It's also my opinion, always. So, and that's what I'm doing now, and I'm happy. And what I read in those regression accounts is that there were groups of people incarnating again. They were Essenes, they were Cathars, and now they're incarnating again, remembering what happened as eyewitnesses, and they work together in these lives, in this life, so that the truth may be revealed.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Let me see, as we conclude here, just to summarize the journey of Mary Magdalene, as I understand it from you, clearly precocious, integrated at a young age into her own mystery traditions, fell in love with Jesus and he with her at a very early age. She was with him when he was designated as the Messiah, and the anointed one stayed with him as the beloved companion through his ministry in the midst of growing, I would say, antagonisms with the other disciples. Peter and others attended to him, which is in the gospel accounts, very closely during the crucifixion and resurrection and ascension. And then I think is when tradition takes over. And as if I understand it, the divisiveness with the other disciples, she then went off to Alexandria, where she wrote the gospel that came to be known as the Gospel of John. And then from there, after about 10 years, made her way to France, where she lived and ministered, and then finally died. Is that a fair understanding of the general contours of the life of Mary Magdalene?
You summarized it quite well. In some details I don't agree, but let's not go into details. I think she had an education in Egypt, because there was this enormous, and there's this Essene background.
Yeah.
Because the Essenes are in the ancient mystery tradition. And in Palestine, there were the Second Temple authorities, Pharisees, scribes, and they were very repressing. They repressed wisdom tradition, the heavenly journey. So girls with higher capacities couldn't be educated in Palestine. So they had to go abroad in Egypt, where there was a much more liberal climate, because there was the ancient Isis tradition. There was a lot more equality between women and men. And in the Essene community of Alexandria, close to Lake Mareotis, we have proofs even of ancient authors that there was a co-leadership of the male and the females. So when you put this kind of Egyptian image,
yes,
she gets her Egyptian education, and she comes back into Palestine. And I think this marriage was long planned and were foreseen. And Jesus had, the Essenes were preparing his mission already for generations, already for 2 centuries at least. So they were designed for each other. So they were married, they were in love. But she was not easily accepted because she had this Egyptian background. And in Palestine, the feminine was diminished.
Of course.
So she had to stay in the background.
Yeah.
And it is quite a miracle that Jesus pointed her. Jesus made her into his successor. You have to understand that in the Essene world, you had the inner circle and you had the outer circle. So, in my opinion, Peter and Andrew belonged to the outer circle, who were not educated into higher knowledge. So the inner circle, which especially were the female disciples and the family members, were all Essene, were all educated in this ancient mystery tradition of the heavenly journey. They had to deal with an outside world that didn't understand.
Yeah.
So that's the whole problem. And then she was not accepted. She had to go away. And there she planted in France this ancient wisdom tradition. So you see, there's a hidden tradition in Western culture. We have to dig up, we have to make it vital, we have to revitalize it again. It has to do with nature, with the love for nature, with the love for Mother Earth, with the portals to etheric and astral levels in the earth. It has to do with the constellations, the cosmic surroundings, because it was a stellar religion. And, there's this whole worldview, this whole view of cosmos will change when we really go into this heavenly journey, this ascension process. And I think what Christianity is teaching us now, orthodox, canonical, that he is the only Son of God. He is the only one who took an ascension, and his mother at the end was allowed to. So only two people, Jesus and his mother, were allowed to ascend. And because he was the unique Son of God, and he was resurrected. So, and he died for our guilt, for our sins, and all these. It isn't true. It is a deformation. And now it is time to bring forth, bring back to the world the higher knowledge, which is the essence of the teaching of Yeshua and Mary Magdalene. And that is what I'm doing now, I hope.
Thank you so much, Anine. This has been very profound and very illuminating, particularly coming as it is right before we make pilgrimage to the sacred feminine, etheric energies in Chartres, where Mary Magdalene has such a noble place. There's a stained glass called the Mary Magdalene window, and different sanctuaries in the cathedral. So thank you so much. There's many people who are very much hoping you can join the after session chat. Do you have a little bit more time to join another a more informal group that meets at the end of this session? You can see the link in the chat box there, and I can send you the link. But it would be splendid if you could spend a few more. There's been lots of questions that I didn't get to, and we're now out of time that people would love to ask you.
I try, but I'm not good. I tried last time, and I'm not so good at these things. So I will try, but I don't know if I will get to.
Well, if you just go into the chat box and you can see you can join the after chat here, you just click on that link, and that'll take you there.
Yeah.
And I'll also send it to you. It was in the email actually that Matt sent you to give you the Zoom link here, so you have it. That people would be thrilled to spend a little bit more time. So thank you so much. This is the feast day of Mary Magdalene, everyone. It is the time each year where really the partner of Jesus of Nazareth, the lover, the wife, the mother of his children, is consecrated, a woman who had a tremendous effect on the origin of Christianity, helped shape the life and ministry of Jesus, wrote one of the 4 canonical gospels, although she was taken out in the end, and then really birthed the very important strand in the Western mystical tradition that was really distilled in this gospel of the beloved companion that Anine has been speaking from for our session today. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Anine. This has been a beautiful, very profound, sacred moment in Humanity Rising. I'm deeply appreciative. That'll do it for us for today. You're welcome to the after chat session. You'll see the link in the chat box, and we'll see you on Monday for a 2-day program on trees from some tree whisperers that speak to trees, understand trees, and can communicate to human beings unlearned in the language of trees what the trees are saying. It's a remarkable capacity. So that's Monday, Tuesday. And just as a reminder, everyone, next week is our final week for Humanity Rising before we take a break in August, where we're going to make pilgrimage to Chartres, those of you who can join. And then we'll be back, I believe it's the 6th of September, with an extraordinary program for the fall that's already been mapped out, which I'll talk a little bit more about next week. But thank you, Anine. Thank you all, and enjoy your weekend.